diagnosis of celiac disease. About 80% of doctors report never having made a diagnosis of celiac disease. So a lot of people coming in, they say, oh, you have irritable bowel syndrome, or you have, so even if we just talk about true celiac disease, you know, the kind of thing that every doctor would agree, this is a real problem, you should be off wheat, most people aren't even getting diagnosed that have true celiac disease. And now it turns out there's a whole nother world of people, nobody knows how many, that are having real reactions to gluten, but they don't fit the diagnostic criteria because their biopsies are normal, their blood tests are normal. But when they give up gluten, their life improves dramatically, and their health improves dramatically. So that's
the NCGS stands for
celiac gluten sensitivity.
sensitivity.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of that's all I want to say about the science. So I'm just going to pause this for a second, just to. So we're going to move on. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just another question about the villi.
And yes, they do grow back.
They do go back.
Yeah.
What about people who have problems with absorption? I find calcium, magnesium, for one, as I have a problem absorbing. Does that have to do with the villi, or would it be?
Well, there are so many things that can be off in the gut that would lead to problems with absorption. What form do you take? What form of magnesium do you take?
Just the cheap stuff, you know, the oxide.
Okay. Well, where else do you find magnesium oxide?
Nowhere.
No, wet and dry sandpaper. So the kind of thing you'd use if you're sanding metal. So
I've tried different forms, and
Of course, fine.
one of the problems with magnesium is it causes loose bowel effect and so forth.
Well, especially oxide.
Yeah, the oxide does that.
Especially oxide.
If you just try malate, magnesium malate, that's one that's readily available. That
I've tried that too.
Yeah.
What about just calm? Your natural calm, it's magnesium citrate, and a lot of people like that.
But mag citrate
Or transdermal.
or transdermal. Mag citrate is what's in the little green bottle that you take when you have constipation.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm talking about, what is natural calm made of?
It's citrate, I believe.
And you're saying that's not good?
No, some people have a big reaction to it in terms of it moving their bowels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but again, I'm just saying, you know, part of it is the type you take, how much it can be absorption.
But malate is, from what I've read, and get on Dr. Carolyn Dean's website, and she's like the magnesium expert in the world, I think.
I've had a reaction from all of them, but I guess some maybe a little bit more than others. But they all seem to have that.
Well, and one other thing, and
Well,
again,
start
the
slowly.
the other thing that can happen is if you are extremely deficient in a mineral, and you start taking it in a form that's actually soluble and absorbable, you can have a big reaction to it. In other words, you're going from 0 to 100 too quickly. So sometimes, you know, you've got to find one that you've seen, you know, through muscle testing or dowsing or something, that this one should be good for you, and just start with very, very low doses. And then slowly over time, I'm talking over weeks and weeks, increase and see if you can tolerate it that way.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me is the fact that I need to take it, because a lot of people don't take it at all and they're fine, you know.
They're not fine.
No.
I mean, in an ideal world, you would get everything you need.
You
from,
can't eat
from
enough
food.
or the right kind of food.
Yeah, I mean,
There
if
are-
all your food were grown on the side of a volcano, if you lived in Hawaii, you'd probably have enough magnesium. But just as and this comes from work, and you can't measure your mineral status with serum levels. In other words, you
Right.
can't get a serum magnesium. It won't tell you anything about, you know, calcium, magnesium. It won't tell you anything about what your total body load is. But just as an example, if you have a heart attack and you show up in the emergency room, they get worried, they take you in the back, they hook you up to a monitor, they start an intravenous line. What is the first thing they give you? They give you a bag of magnesium sulfate. And the reason they do that is that the thing that's going to kill you if you've had a heart attack is an arrhythmia. And so that's why they're monitoring you and, you know, prepared if your heart goes into a bad rhythm. But the thing that's going to exacerbate the tendency to go to arrhythmia is being deficient in magnesium. And in studies that were done in the 80s, looking at people, they found that just about everybody was deficient in magnesium. So it's just a no-brainer, you know. And so when they started doing that, when giving mag sulfate as the first thing that you did when somebody shows up in the emergency room with a heart attack, you know, the incidence of arrhythmias was cut by a factor of 10. You know, so people weren't just coding and having their heart stop on the gurney in the emergency room.
And which kind of magnesium should one take?
I like malate, just because it tends to be the malic acid. It's a malic acid salt of magnesium is also very good for your gut, so it's sort of a 2-for-1. But you want to take one that you tolerate.
Do you take it with or without food?
Magnesium, it doesn't really matter. Magnesium is more like a macronutrient. You need so much of it that it doesn't just take it, whenever. Okay, but that's enough on magnesium. So I wanted to go just a little bit to.
But I wonder if people that prehistoric people who lived almost 100 years, they didn't take extra magnesium. They just
No, but they
got
weren't.
it from the food.
The first report to Congress of the depletion of minerals in our soils was in the 30s, and it's only gotten worse since then. So, when you farm the way that we farm in this country, you suck all of the minerals out of the soil, and you can still pull a crop out of very depleted soils with supersulfate fertilizers. So the kind of chemical fertilizers that are used allow you to still pull a crop that you can take to the market and sell, but it has virtually no minerals in it. And so that's yet another reason why to eat organic food. Putting minerals into your soil, that's a legal amendment if you have an organic farm. And in California, a lot of it comes out of this plant out of Sunnyvale. It's just this plant that has these big machines that just crush rock into a dust, and they put it in 50-pound bags and ship pallets full of it all over the state. And because if the soil is normally mineralized or well mineralized, then the plants are healthier, they do a better job of fending off pests and molds and things like that. They're hardier. So it's the organic farmers know that trying to keep some minimal level of minerals in your soil is a way to make a healthier crop that doesn't need as much work, but it also means that the plants are better mineralized.
What's the name of that place in Sunnyvale?
I don't remember.
Is it a cement plant place that makes?
No, they just make crushed rock.
Oh, just for that purpose?
Just for agricultural purposes, yeah. They used to sell it at Common Ground, but now the Common Ground's closed. I tell you,
They are.
yeah, Common Ground closed a couple of months ago.
Oh, God.
Well, the Bountiful Harvest, that's the mail order company that's associated with Grow Biointensive. So the mail order part is still online.
Bountiful what?
Bountiful Harvest,
Thank
Bountiful Gardens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How many magnesium hours should we take it?
As much as you can take without getting diarrhea.
And then you just cut back, and then you'll be able to take more as you go.
Yeah, bountifulgardens.org is the website. So the
You didn't turn that back on, I don't think, Damon, did you?
may have gone off because of battery. Let's see. No, the card's full. That's okay. We got this other one going.
Okay.
Okay. So again, just a little bit about the approach you might take for this. I said it before, but what I recommend is doing an experiment with just eating a diet that's a little simpler for a while. Don't think of it as forever, but the common foods, the foods that most commonly seem to cause reactions are wheat, cow dairy,
What was the second one?
cow dairy,
Oh, cow dairy.
yeah, soy. Some people have a reaction to eggs. Those are kind of those are foods that a lot of people have reactions to. It doesn't mean everybody does.
Yeah.
There are, and corn for some people. The one I just want to say, and again, a lot of this. So I'm saying for you, the approach you want to take with this is simply to try and play with your own diet and see what kind of an effect it has for you. Make your decisions based on that. And there have been a couple of books. People aware of the book Grain Brain?
Yeah.
So everybody's worried about Alzheimer's disease. Everybody's worried about losing their mind, losing their memory, and things like that. And this neurologist, Perlmutter, who wrote that book, and there's another internist, William Davis, wrote a book called Wheat Belly. And I mentioned those books. They both have kind of the same message, which is both of these were doctors in practice, seeing a lot of people, and noticed that people who gave up gluten did better. So the internist, he tells the story, in his book, but the first thing that happened was people would come to him and say, I'm reading a lot about gluten, and I read these things that they say gluten can do to you, and I want to give up gluten for a while and see how I do. And he would go, great, let me know how you do. And they would come back, and he'd been following them, and a lot of them were a lot better, surprisingly better, much better than he ever thought possible. And so the next phase was he'd be talking with people and go, well, I'm seeing other people that are having these problems you have, and they gave up gluten, and it seemed to help them. I try it. And after 1,500 people doing this, he wrote a book, and what's important about it, it isn't so much that that gluten's bad or it's not bad. It's that a lot of doctors who work this way have noticed the same thing. And so again, what you're interested in is, does it make a difference for me? And the only way you're going to know if it makes a difference for you is to give it up for a while and see how you do. And so the wheat and cow dairy, this one's a big one. In the autistic community, parents of autistic kids have noticed huge benefits for their kids if they deal with their diet. And it's become so common, it's got just a little shorthand, which is the GFCF diet. Gluten-free, casein-free diet. Casein being the protein in milk that is present in milk, whether it's organic, raw, fresh off the farm, or whether it's...
Now it's different in goat milk though, right?
Goat's a different animal. We're talking cows.
I understand. So if people change to goat products, they're not going to...
Some people have a problem with goat as well. But again, you just need to play around with it. But yeah, goat is not as reactive for some reason. I don't know why.
I think I read that the molecules are smaller or something.
Well, yeah, the proteins are different.
Right.
And it's the proteins you're reacting to, really. Right. But the other thing that sometimes is part of the reaction is how it's grown. So, the foods that are GMO, so rice, soy, corn, those are the big ones. Do people understand why farmers would grow a GMO crop? What's the advantage to them?
They last for 4,500 years.
Well, that's one good reason. But they're modified in a way that they allow the use of the herbicide glyphosate or Roundup.
Roundup, yeah.
And so they're called Roundup ready crops.
I read the other day.
And so what it means is that you can spray a field of soybeans with glyphosate. It'll kill all the weeds, it won't kill the soybeans or corn or rice.
Yeah.
And so the consequence of that is that those foods are full of glyphosate, which now the understanding used to be, when that was approved by the EPA, was that it was a benign chemical for human beings, it was safe, and it turns out, well, that's just not true. And in fact, there's a movie being made, a local woman's making a movie about glyphosate.
Well, I read the other day from, I don't know, Mercola, who knows where, but that it's in everything. It's in all of us.
Yeah.
It's in newborn babies.
Yeah.
Roundup.
Right.
Would you write that on the board, please?
What's that?
Glyphosate?
Glyphosate, yeah.
Just think Roundup.
Yeah.
Well, what you're going to be seeing in the news this year is glyphosate. Roundup is just the brand name, the Monsanto's brand name for
I know, but I talked to somebody at Summer Winds, and they won't quit selling Roundup.
Right.
Because people don't want weeds.
Right. But it's bad enough putting it on your yard, but putting it on foods that people are going to eat is...
Yeah.
So there's a lot of thinking that the negative effects that are being noted from GMO foods, it's hard to tell whether it's because the GMO foods themselves are bad or because they're just so full of glyphosate.
Do you know if the glyphosates, I talked to people at my favorite corporation, Monsanto, and they said the glyphosates will dissipate in the soil after a while. Do you have any, is that true or not?
Not enough. Yeah.
Because I'm a little disturbed because I have a piece of property that had a lot of poison
Years
oak,
ago,
and I
Dan
use it to
used
get
to
rid of the
tell
poison
us.
oak.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It's not a what's referred to as a POP, a persistent organic pollutant. It doesn't persist for
Forever.
eons
Yeah.
in the environment. It does eventually degrade, but it sticks around long enough to be present in measurable and significant amounts in the food that it's sprayed on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, after a year, would that be enough maybe to,
You can measure it.
you know,
That's actually hard, but yeah.
Speaking of time, how long do you go without these things to test yourself?
I recommend at least 8 weeks, just because 6 weeks is sort of a minimum. So go 8 weeks, and then if you're not convinced, add it back in and see how you do. And again, that questionnaire that I was telling you about before, that's something to give you a little bit of objective data about whether you were affected or not. So the glyphosate is one of the things, but the other thing I just want to say, I realize I'm talking to people who are very aware of these things, but one of the problems with GMO, as you know, is that they've never been tested. So they've been sort of turned loose on us without any real testing. Well, we're not